The G61 and G61S are both mid-sized mice with identical dimensions, but this is where the similarities end. The wireless version, the G61S, is equipped with a Pixart 3335 sensor, Omron 20M switches, USB-C charging port, and weighs in at around 84 grams for $45. The wired G61, on the other hand, is the real star of this show, coming in with a Pixart 3389 sensor, KLGM 8.0 switches, and tipping the scales at only 65 grams, and all of this for $39 US. Now, as expected, the unboxing experience on both mice fits their budget price tag. No surprises, no accessories, and the manual doesn't make it very clear where you can download the much needed software from. More on that shortly. Build quality on both mice is in line with the price you pay. Now, you shouldn't expect premium brand, but it's certainly better than some of the similarly priced competition in this price range, with no creak or flex and limited rattle or noise. The sides of the shell feature a textured plastic designed to provide grip, similar to the Delux m800, but just like the m800, this doesn't really do too much, so you may have to find some grip tape here to keep a secure grip on the mouse. All buttons were pleasantly tensioned, in particular the GM 8.0 clicks on the G61 wired. The scroll wheel on both was quite light with limited tactile steps, very similar to the pre-Starlight Final mouse wheels, and the click was more satisfying again on the wired G61. The side buttons used on both mice are the full-size standard switches, unlike its closest budget comparison, the m800, which uses elevated micro-dot switches for the side buttons. These are very mushy and have limited tactile feedback when used, nothing like the buttons on the G61 and G61S. Here's a quick sound test so you can hear the difference between the KL and the Omron main switches for yourself. The cable used on both mice isn't the best and kind of reminds me of a Vaxi cord with a little more stiffness. It would absolutely be acceptable to use, but I'd probably suggest a bungee to get the most out of the G61 or 61S if you're playing whilst charging. I did happen to have a spare paracord available, so swapped out the stock cable for testing on the G61. This is not a mandatory mod though, in my opinion. What is a mandatory mod is probably the skates. They are middling at best. The G61 were just about good enough to play with, but the G61S was so scratchy and thin that I was worried they might actually damage my pad. As a quick fix, I used a set of G Pro Hyperglides that I had straight over the top of the existing thin skates. Now, fortunately, because the 3335 sensor has a higher lift-off distance on the 61S, double stacking the skates wasn't an issue, and the mouse still tracked accurately without introducing significant DPI deviation. The battery life is quoted at 50 to 500 hours depending on usage, and the gigantic 700 mAh battery included tells me I can absolutely believe the figures that FL eSports claim here. During testing, I swapped the battery on my copy for a 100 mAh capacity, saving approximately 10 grams in weight on the wireless model and bringing the total weight down to 75 grams. I've made a separate video showing you how to easily swap batteries on wireless mice, so if you wanted to make this mod yourself, I've linked this on the screen and in the description. As I mentioned, the software for both was a bit of a pain to find, with each having their own version. To hopefully make it easier for people, I've added links in the description to where I found them to navigate the Chinese site of FL eSports, as the correct software wasn't available on the English site. The software is functional, allowing you to customize the buttons, set custom DPI stages, modify the poll rate, the debounce time, change RGB settings, and add macros or even turbo binds. Disappointingly, there was no lift-off distance adjustment for either mouse, but on a positive note, the mice do appear to have an onboard memory, so you'll likely set them once and never touch this software again. Now, in terms of gaming performance, I got on really well with this shape, which is quite reminiscent of the Zowie FK series, or more recently, the Razer Viper or Razer Viper Mini. Difference here is that the G61 has a significant hourglass curve, which, whilst closer to the Viper, has a little more height on mouse 1, mouse 2 and the main hump, which kind of felt a bit like the G Pro X Superlight. The best way I could describe the feel in the hand was if you mix the G Pro X Superlight and the Razer Viper side contours. For me, this made the mouse a lot easier to fingertip and claw over longer periods compared to the Superlight. The biggest compliment I could give this mouse was that in-game, I forgot I was testing a budget product and performed in line with my own skill level when using other more premium mice. When I missed shots, it was absolutely down to my bad aim and not the mouse, with no detectable motion delay, sensor jitter, spin-outs, slam clicks or other common flaws seen in budget mice. Moving swiftly on to the positives, the first here is the price, specifically on the G61 wired. I don't think I've found a wired mouse with the same specs offered here for a similar price anywhere. If you don't mind wires and only have $39 for a top tier mouse, the G61 will offer some of the best specs available. Next, the build quality. Now this is subjective as I only have 2 retail units to comment on, but for the price I was impressed when compared to other budget mice I've bought for $20 to $30 more than the cost of the G61 and 61S. The side buttons use full-size regular Huano switches. I can't emphasize how much of a positive this is compared to something like the Delux m800. If you play games that heavily rely on side button usage and are torn between this and the m800, there really is no competition between the two. Now, specifically talking G61, the weight here is exceptional. For a mouse without holes to hit 64 grams while still using quality components at the price asked is an achievement and really disrupts the budget market. And lastly, the size and shape is safe. There's nothing too drastic about the design. If you've used a Razer Viper, a Logitech G Pro Wireless, or even the Delux M800, you'll have a good approximation of what this mouse is going to feel like in your hand. Moving on to improvements, I'm going to kick it off with the topics that both mice could do before narrowing down on the wireless G61S, where I think there are some specific areas that probably need calling out for that mouse in particular. First improvement for both mice would be the skates. With no aftermarket options available and no spares in the box, the skates offered on this mouse really aren't great and let down an otherwise well-spec'd and high-performing mouse. I hope FL eSports can look to address this, as thicker 100% PTFE skates wouldn't add much to their build costs and will make this mouse a lot more easy to recommend out of the box. Now, the scroll wheel is a minor complaint, but compared to most other premium mice that I've been using, it noticeably lacks defined steps and tactility on both the 61 and 61S. Whilst the build quality is solid and the plastic use doesn't attract fingerprints, it also doesn't have the best texture for grip, and I'd imagine a lot of people will probably opt for grip tape to address this. Moving on to specific issues with the G61S wireless, I want to start with the stock weight. Now, 84 grams with its standard battery, even in the budget space, is around 10 grams higher than its closest competitor, the Delux M800, which is sold at a lower price with the same sensor. The stock 700 mAh battery can be replaced as I did, but this adds cost and complexity to a mouse that has no reason not to be lighter out of the box. As just mentioned, the price on the 61S is above the competition with worse specs on the wireless model. It's a good mouse, but at $45 it's competing with even entry-level premium brands like the Logitech G305. Lastly, the 3335 sensor used on the 61S feels a little outdated for a late 2021 release. Even in the budget space, we've increasingly seen wireless mice using 3370s, and I think if FL eSports are looking to retain the $45 price tag, an upgraded sensor could be a way for them to help justify it. My conclusion on the 61 and 61S is really that it's a tale of two mice. The wired G61 is well priced, well built and features competitive specs that make it an easy mouse to suggest that people check out. The wireless 61S, however, is a much less attractive offering, delivering a mouse that doesn't use the latest wireless sensor tech and is both heavier and more expensive than its closest budget rival. Unfortunately, whilst the G61 is a great mouse, a lot of people won't even consider using a wired mouse in late 2021, so I'm not sure if the 61 will get the attention or recognition it deserves. To conclude, I think FL eSports have delivered solid mice. They have good fundamentals to build on, but unless the G61S can either make the improvements I've suggested or see the price reduced to better align to its competition, I don't think FL eSports will really move the needle much with this release.